Oh, why you crying? Why you crying? We just started the show. There's no like, hey, settle down, settle down. Today we're going to be talking about gentle parenting, and Jason and I are going to jump into no man's land. We're going to be talking about parenting techniques that we think maybe are a little bit suspect, maybe some parenting techniques that we think are a little tried and true. I don't know where Jason's going to go with this one, but this is an episode that we've been wanting to talk about for a while because we're watching this recent and modern phenomenon take place where parents are essentially bargaining with their kids, essentially going through a democratic process with their kids to figure out who really does make the decisions in the family. And so we are here at the Way Forward Show. In just a second, Jason is going to come on. The good doctor himself is going to come on. He's going to talk to us. And so thank you for joining the Way Forward Show. Let's get this thing going today. Comment section is turned on, and I'm excited about this one.
Government officials insist
Hello.
What's up, my man? Good to see you this
Hi.
morning.
Yeah, it's great seeing you as well.
I see you
I don't
living
know.
large in the background
Yeah, my palatial estate.
there. Did I ever tell you the first time you used that backdrop? I did
You
not
thought I'd made
catch
it.
that it was. Yeah, well, I thought you were staying. Here's the thing: I thought you were staying with somebody who was really on the up, and you're looking at me like I remember having a conversation with you, and you can't tell if I'm being serious or I'm jacking with you, and you're just looking at me, but I'm serious as a heart attack. Man, that's a nice place you're staying in. Where you
This
staying?
is my secondary studio.
I was completely ignorant of the fact that you could have a back. That just shows you how unsavvy I am in some of this technology. What we could do, how we could do it.
I don't know if you ever saw that movie Cinderella Man with Russell Crowe.
Yes. Yeah.
Speaking of boxing, we'll get there in just a second. But Cinderella Man, he has this scene where Russell Crowe's the prize fighter who's kind of down on his luck and everything, and he's going around. He's asking his friends, "Hey, just a little bit you can put in the hat. I got to feed my kids. I'm just trying to make it. I'm just trying to make it one more day." And he's going to collection. As a man, you kind of sense that part because he's at his last penny, his last wits end. He's got to go beg other people for food for his kids. It's kind of a low point. And then he goes to his friend, and his friend is like, "Hey man, I got you." His friend is always living large, nice suits and everything. And he's like, "Oh man, go ahead and come on in." He walks into his friend's house. His friend has got no furniture whatsoever. On the outside, it looked perfect. On the outside, he looked good.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to tell you, when I have this background, I got nothing in the background that anybody would want to see. This is the best that it gets.
This is it. This is it for us. This is it.
So
I got
I'm
you.
glad that people think that I made it, but sometimes when I'm wearing nice clothes, it's because the other ones aren't clean.
Yeah. I got you.
Yeah.
No, I just thought it was so foolish of me. I was sitting there like, man, Erskine, man, who are you staying with? That's good stuff.
This is my new studio. What's day? What's day? Well, that's great. Speaking of fighting and pugilism, did you get a chance to, kind of dateline this, but did you get a chance to see the Mike Tyson fight last night?
It's so crazy that you said that because I can remember saying that as a kid. And almost 60 years old, we're here, we're saying it again.
Yes.
I did not get to watch it. I tried to do the Netflix thing, but Netflix was a bust.
Really?
I couldn't get on for anything. There's a lot of people watching it. And,
yes, there were.
So I had to read it as it was going on ESPN. They had rounds. And it just looked like it was kind of a lackluster fight where Paul just kind of led the way in jabs and punches. And then I talked to Sonny this morning, and he said it was kind of a boring. The highlight of the night was two women who were fighting a little bit before that.
Oh yeah,
so the Tyson Paul fight wasn't that lustrous, I guess. He did say at the end, Paul did this weird thing where he bowed to him and gave him a hug or something, but that to me is just all YouTube.
Oh yeah.
shenanigans.
Oh yeah. There's a lot of hype.
Just,
There's
I
a
don't
lot of
know.
smoke. There's a lot of shadows. I mean, I think Mike Tyson was really trying to go out and box, but you could tell. I could tell when he was walking down the tunnel, he just didn't have it.
Well, Sonny said he had a knee brace on.
He had a knee brace on.
But you can't show up to a boxing match with a knee brace on.
Yeah.
All of his power came from his legs and his hips. He was a force when he could kick those hips. I mean, that was his thing. He would get you a body shot, and then he'd uppercut you, and you're done. 60 seconds, you're done.
Yeah. He had no
Strong,
legs.
so
His
strong.
legs were jelly.
Yeah, he had no legs. That's what I read, and that's kind of what everybody's affirming. They just, but you know, for 58 years old, he went 8 rounds with this young 28-year-old kind of boxer, and held his own. I don't know. Not many 58-year-old men could say that. So I give him,
Duly
give
noted.
him props. The man can still fight. He can. That's not a dude I'd want to tangle with. So
Yeah. So anyway, we'll talk about that a little bit later. We're gonna get on gentle
speaking
parenting
of fighting,
today.
let's go into progressive parenting.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We're moving from that topic of fighting and biting, to the next topic of fighting and biting, which is sometimes kids. And we'll get into some Matt Walsh stuff here in just a second. But why don't you lead us, good doctor, in a word of prayer, and
Yeah.
we'll get started with our topic today.
Father, we're so thankful this morning that we get to just have a conversation together and to talk. And I always am thankful for Erskine and his ministry and his life and his wisdom and his input. I just pray, Lord, that you would just help us to think wisely about our parenting. We are getting the opportunity to influence the next generation. We get the opportunity to show who you are to these kids, and we have to do it right, Lord. We have to do it with a bit of humility and grace, but with intention and discipline. And so just help us to talk wisely and be gentle but firm. We ask in Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. So we are voted the number one show. Well, we voted on it by ourselves. But
yeah,
in case you're wondering, we took 2 votes, and they both came in favor of our show.
Do we still have an
Okay.
Indian audience? We were
Yeah.
pretty big in India, weren't we?
Yeah, well, you know, all around the world, there's people who tend to
There's-
watch this show.
Tend to kind of step in.
They tend to pay attention to sometimes what it is we have to say. So I wanted to put the fair use clause up there just to let people know that we are using this under that, guys. And so when we use source material, it'll be under that clause as well. If you haven't already liked and subscribed to the Wait Forward show, go ahead and do that. All right. I want to get into some of the Matt Walsh stuff here. You know, just from a general cultural commentary perspective, I think he's got some pretty good things to say. And we'll start with a definition that he gives and see if this definition is valid related to gentle parenting. All right.
Punishment. It's centered on partnership as both parents.
Let me back that up just a little bit.
Continuing, quote, gentle parenting is a means of parenting without shame, blame, or punishment. It's centered on partnership as both parents and children have a say in this collaborative style. The quote, gentle parenting, also known as collaborative parenting, is a style of parenting where parents do not compel children to behave by means of punishment or control, but rather use connection, communication, and other democratic methods to make decisions together as a family, says Danielle Sullivan, a parenting coach. Gentle parenting teaches children that they can be active in the world, set their own boundaries, trust their own needs, and make their voices heard.
All right.
Mm.
We'll leave that up there for people to look at. In terms of definitions, I know we always like to start with the definition and work our way from there. So let's get it. Good doctor, where do you want to go today?
Oh, man. Ooh. Talk about a subject that is dear to my heart. I have 5 children of my own. I work with children and parents. I see all kinds of different things. And I also read my Bible. And so oftentimes those things are at odds because I'm watching things thinking, this right here is a mistake. This is a mistake. Because it makes a lot of assumptions, crazy assumptions. First of all, one of the assumptions, by the very fact that it's gentle parenting, that any other parenting is not gentle. That's an assumption. Authoritative parenting, for instance, is not gentle. But that's not true, right? The other assumption this thing is making is that children have the capacity to actually partner with you, collaborate, share in the democratic process, as if they come preset with these categories or abilities to just kind of actually engage inside of the discussion and also be able to understand the consequences that are coming. That's just not true. That's not true.
Okay.
There's some assumptions that are here. They also assume that the democratic process is a wise way to parent your children, and it's not. Excuse me.
Okay.
It's not. There's some things that I think that are characteristics. So maybe to help our discussion a little bit, I think there are some things that I've noticed with, say, gentle parenting or permissive parenting, right?
Now, Jason, before you do that, can I get you to dive in for just a second? There might be some people who are watching this or will watch this a little bit later who are kind of wondering, again, a little bit more about the context of parenting that you have, the experience that you have. I have 2 kids. We're a foster family, and so we've got a lot of iterations, and we've had family size of 5, 4, 3, all different combinations of that. And so I'll be speaking into it from that vantage point. But you have 5 kids, and just give just a general overlay of your family before you go into this point about where the shortfalls are.
I have 5 children. Naomi's going to be 21 in January. Elias is 7. So that's our spectrum. I think it goes 20, 21, 20, 16, 15, 7, something like that. We have been doing this for 20 some years now. We've been married 22 years. I've also been inside of education and family ministry. So aside from my parenting, I've gotten an opportunity to work with a lot of families and children over the years, inside the public school district, inside of private school, inside of mentoring type ministries. I've got to work with affluent families. I've got to work with impoverished families. I mean, by the grace of God, I've just gotten the opportunity to just observe a lot of parenting.
Okay, I think that helps.
Yeah. Some of it I've been able to glean from and say, wow, I want to take that into my own. And other times I've had to learn through negative, like, no, that's a bad idea. I'll tell you, though, that the biggest turnaround for me as a parent is my Bible. It's reading and understanding the Word. So that's been the most helpful. And then the second most helpful is being in the church, because these are the church, and you get to watch them inside of the intimacy of the church. So that's kind of been my experience. Also, I mean, I don't know if we're doing credential type stuff here, but a lot of my studying has been involved around family ministry, parenting,
education.
Education. So that's just kind of been my world for a little bit. Not that I've arrived by all means. Please don't take that as if like I've got the market on parenting. I don't. I don't have it. I tell my congregation all the time, if you step into our house, we are, what, as Dave Future will say, 10 minutes from stupid. Just about every moment of the day. And there's a lot of mistakes we make. But we do have a philosophy of parenting that is intentional, that doesn't look like this.
That is different. And I think that's important for people to understand.
Yeah.
We are going to be talking about some differences here in gentle parenting. So if you tuned in today, if you wanted to hear how the merits of gentle parenting are just helping a generation of children flourish in our society, this is probably not going to be your episode, but at least I'm going to try to steel man the argument for just a moment after Jason gets done, and we'll see where we can go from there.
Yeah, I think it's helpful. What are some of the problems I have with just gentle parenting, I guess? Because I've seen it. I've seen it in action. I've watched it.
Over a long period of time.
It's been developing for a while. I've been at times frustrated with it, and then I've tried to also glean some things from it. So here's some things I think that are, for me, that I'm thinking about gentle parenting, permissive parenting. So it says it's a style where parents are, warm and nurturing, and I think again that's an assumption that is wrong, in the sense that authoritative parents, say so to speak, that's another style, can be just as warm and nurturing. But where you're going to find is the where the expectations and the rules follow. Permissive parenting tends to have low expectations and impose few rules. They kind of let things linger. The parents in the permissive side or the gentle side tend to look at communication as openly as possible, trying to, like we said, negotiate or talk to kids, and almost like as if they're adults in that sense.
Uh-huh.
Uh, they have low expectations of their children, and rarely have high expectations of mature behavior. That's an issue for me.
Now,
Um,
Jason, is there a contradiction there where you say the parents have low expectations in terms of the discipline, but they have high expectations in terms of the kid's ability or the child's ability to be able to make important decisions?
well, yeah, because they're assuming that the child comes with some degree of understanding already what to do. When you and I are talking, the reason why you and I can communicate and collaborate together is you've lived long enough in the world to figure a few things out. I've lived long enough in the world to figure things out. And by golly, you and I have figured a few things out together. And we are able to talk and share these categories. Now, there's some nuances that you have, and there's some nuances that I have. And that's where the collaboration happens, right? Children don't have that. They're coming into the world. They're coming into the world with a broken nature, for starters. That's one of the things that.
And I think that theologically that we need to trace that down a little bit.
Right. So at the fall, when Adam sinned, Paul tells us that sin has come to all men. So all the offspring of Adam are born broken. That's your little baby girl. That's your little baby boy. Beautiful, but broken. Come in with a rebellious heart, with a rebellious nature. And you know this because the moment you tell that child no, when they're 2 or 3 years old, they throw a fit. They have a tantrum. You have to teach that child how to share. You have to teach the child not to pull the other kid's hair when they're getting annoyed. You have to teach the child to respect boundaries. All of that is something that has to happen where the parent is intentionally helping the child navigate this world and navigate the home. But this permissive parenting thing kind of says that the kids kind of come in the world with a clean slate.
Okay.
Like, they're just born, and we get there and we get to kind of shape that. And the way we want to shape that is being, keep the expectations somewhat low, especially in maturity. Just let them kind of blossom on their own. Impose few rules and guidelines for their behavior. Don't say the word no. Use discipline very sparingly. Avoid punishment. Allow the children to make their own choices, like what to eat and when to go to bed and how much time to spend watching television, that kind of thing. And I'm generalizing because every gentle parent is probably going to have those boundaries a little different. But
Yeah, and the culture in which people are parenting changes depending on your socioeconomic situation in life, amount of leisure time that you have, context, part of the country. Like, there's a lot of different variables that you'll put into that.
Yeah, and also you'll see that these gentle parenting will kind of accept and support their child's behavior, including some of these aggressive impulses, even allowing the child to hit back a little bit at you. They tend to rarely control their children or govern their time schedule, which is massive. But here's the other weird thing, right? Is when it comes to like monitoring their child's activities, they become kind of hovering because what they do is they get their kids engaged in everything possible, because all those things are going to help them grow to be a cultured, whole young man or young woman. And then they also tend to want to bulldoze obstacles because they don't like rejection or failure. So they try to control the kid's environment. They try to manipulate it. And I've seen this the most inside of education, where parents will try to do something to get the obstacles out of the way so that it makes it easier for their kid to walk in the path. I've
Right.
even seen it so much where, you know, when we were in high school, you had the task of if you wanted to ask somebody to homecoming, right? You had to go ask the person to homecoming. I've
It
even
gets
seen
turned down.
parents,
Yeah.
yeah, because parents are so afraid of their kids getting rejected that moms will call ahead of time and talk to the girl's parents or something, or the guy's parents, and try to see if this is going to be a good thing or not, and then allow their child to go there. I just thought that was insane. I thought that was crazy. I thought that was you don't know how to handle rejection. And here's the downfall of this is that studies are starting to show that these kids who grew up in a permissive parenting household tend to have increased alcohol use, higher rates of misconduct at school, and lower academic achievement. They're just not as motivated. And
Okay.
we've been doing this long enough that now we're starting to see the results. And so this is what I've seen. Just my observations as I'm watching this happen. They don't like to say the word no. No, you know, you're about to stick your finger in the light socket. Are you sure you want to stick your finger in the light socket? Could there be another place you want to stick your finger? No. You smack that hand, you say no. That'll kill you. Don't mess with that.
Yeah,
Don't
it's
do that.
interesting, and I'll just talk a little about this, and then I want to try to steel man an argument here. From our vantage point, you know, obviously we've not subscribed to gentle parenting. I was raised kind of old school, if you will, and I've thought if I can cherry pick anything from the old school, it is this understanding of authority. It is this respect for authority. It is this idea that there needs to be purpose and direction and intentionality in what it is that you're doing. It is this idea that, you know, coming with a biblical worldview and an understanding of the fact that we do not have a tabula rasa or a blank slate when we come into the world, that we're dramatically bent in the direction of sin and wanting our own desires, our throats an open grave. And so lies and deceit and all those different things is resonant within the heart of a child. Believing that and acting upon those types of things as a parent has been interesting. The case study, I would say, for our family at least, is that as a foster family, we have to introduce at periods and seasons of our family's existence kids into our family whom, by virtue of the fact that they're wards of the state, we are not able to punish them with physical discipline. We are not able to set some of the rigid boundaries that we normally would as a child for our own children. And so that's been a challenge and an obstacle whereby we've had to, in some cases, default to some of these techniques of, you know, redirection, de-escalation, negotiation, and those types of things. And I can guarantee you that when we've done those types of things, it's been, you know, with mixed results. And I would say, by virtue of our experience, we think that, and I'm speaking on behalf of my wife now, we think that we, in some cases, do a disservice to those children who are not given fixed boundaries with immediate consequences, because you allow things to go on and on and on and on.
Right.
And it doesn't instill the confidence that people think that it's going to instill in the child, but in terms it promotes a type of existence whereby the child is uncertain as to where the boundaries are at. Am I negotiating these boundaries as a child, or are you negotiating these boundaries? Well, how are we going to figure this out? How are we going to move forward? And we have just maybe in general, and I can categorize it in general, not come away with a very good understanding or a very good appreciation for gentle parenting. Now, Jason, let me do this. I'm going to give you 3 things that I think gentle parenting does well.
Okay.
3 things.
Sure.
I'm going to try to steel man this. It can prioritize the relationship between the parent and the child. In some cases, making sure that that child knows that you're with them as a parent and that you're for them. Again, I'm trying hard here. Prioritizing the relationship, the parent-child relationship. All right, second thing. It can help a child develop their verbal confidence, where they're able to negotiate things and speak to things. There is the old adage that children should be seen and not heard. Well, this says that the child can be seen and heard, and the child can develop verbal skills and learn to use those verbal skills. Number 3, the child who is advocating, perhaps because they want to go to McDonald's and they want to get the Happy Meal, and you're like, no, we just need a hamburger. We don't need the whole Happy Meal. They're advocating on their reasoning skills. Why is the reason why they want the whole Happy Meal and not just the fries? They can develop reasoning skills. 1, 2, and 3. I tried the best that I could. You see any flaws in that? Huh? Jason? Well, he gone. He gone. Let's get him back in this thing. All right. So I want to try to stop this for just a second and take over this part of the discussion whereby I have given 3 what I consider to be strong arguments for parenting. I want to give a couple of things that I think are the error. Again, Jason and I, whenever he comes back, if he comes back, he may be gone. He may have just said, you know what? I disagree with your entire list. I don't want this thing anymore.
There we go.
Did you disagree?
I didn't hear what you said. Yeah. Okay, so I'm sorry about that. I guess something's wrong on my end. So let's take the idea that you can that gentle parenting prioritizes the relationship between the parent and the child. Is that what you said?
Yeah, it's one of the ones.
Okay. As if other styles don't. Again, the authoritative. I'm using authoritative because I think that's the one that aligns closest to biblical parenting. When I prioritize our relationship, I'm not thinking about the immediate. I'm thinking about the long term.
Okay.
Right? I'm thinking about what is this going to do in 10 years? What is this going to look like in 15 years? If I can deal with this now and create a strategy now for us to understand this world together, then I need to be the one who takes the responsibility for this relationship. I'm the parent. I need to take responsibility. And because right now the child is weak, but there's going to come a day when the child grows up and they're going to take their own responsibility. And then our relationship is going to change. That's going to move from me being the authoritative parental guide, the wise sage, so to speak, to now being the mentor on the side. I've seen that happen in my own relationship with my daughter. I'm now not an authority over her. I'm an authority beside her that she now has to consider or can choose to consider my instruction. But now she's going to have to make up her own mind. I don't think gentle parenting prioritizes the relationship enough. I think it's short term. You know what I'm saying? I don't think it's a long term priority. Here's something to think about. And Randy Stenson did me a big favor in seminary when he described child development a little bit to me. So I understood why I was doing what I was doing. Many parents right now try to operate their parenting style. If you think about a cone, and let's say that cone is upside down. What they do is they tend to give their kids a ton of responsibility and freedom when they're little, when they're young. And it's just, so think about that's the big end of the cone, right? And they just, all these decisions you get to make, all this freedom you get to have. And as the kid begins to grow, they have this expectation that that's always how it's going to be. Well, then the parents begin to tighten things up a little bit because they're starting to see these attitudes and behaviors they don't like. And they start to kind of cramp it in. All of a sudden you get to teenage years and now you've got rebellion and fighting happening in the house. Whereas you should have taken the cone and turned it upside down. You tighten the decision making up early so that you can loosen it up as they get older. Because now they have the capacity to actually understand the consequences of their decisions. At a younger age, what you're going to do is you're going to instill and you're going to create all the categories of wisdom and foolishness in their head. Well, many of them. And you're going to help the child think through a grid as they are making these decisions. But you get to make them early on because you're the adult and you know the consequences. As the child gets older, you begin to release that a little bit and open it up so that they have the opportunity to make these decisions and suffer the natural consequences on their own. And in an environment where it's kind of safe to do that until they get out in the real world and the real world starts kicking their behind. So what we try to do is give them a grid to think through. Well, I don't think gentle parenting prioritizes that process. It doesn't understand that process. So the relationship's going to fall short somewhere around 12, 13 years old, when this child is not really picking up what you're putting down. And now they're starting to fight back, and they're wondering, why are you restricting me? You gave me all these opportunities of freedom when I was a kid. Now you want to tighten the reins up? Now you want to take the keys from me? Here I've been treated an adult this entire time. Now I'm 13, 14. Now I'm not an adult. And now you've got rebellion in the house. And you've got a horrible next 4 years. I'm speaking generally, so just keep that in mind. Because parenting is a spectrum to some degree. You don't even in the Christian world, parenting is still a spectrum. There's some movement about how to do this, but I don't think gentle parenting fits on that spectrum, the way it's presented, the way we're seeing it.
So, Jason, there's a couple of things that you said there that I think we need to kind of tease out just a little bit in this discussion. And one of those is, hopefully you've heard it at this point, but it's the kite analogy, in which you're always trying to check, where your kids are at in their development and, their response to certain things. And so you're letting that kite out because you want your kids to fly. You want your kids to be successful. You want them to do well in the world. And so you're letting out just a little bit of that kite at a time to figure out, can your kids fly? Can they handle the responsibilities? Can they, show up on time? Can they be responsive? Can they, ask for forgiveness and all the different biblical things that we're advocating for? Once they show you that they can do those things, and you let a little bit more out. And so you're talking about these years where 13, 14, 15, 16, you keep letting that thing out so that your kids are able to fly. But when you see that they're not able to fly and they're not able to respond, that's the time in which we still need to hold ourselves in place right here. We still need to get enough wind in the sails for this thing to stay up. So there's that. But I think, Jason, you and I, when we have this discussion, and again, I think it goes without saying that we are not heavy-handed in this discussion, but we are intentional in discussion. Right. What we are essentially saying, Jason, I think you'll agree with this, we're saying that there's something that the kids don't know that's coming after they graduate or when they become a quote-unquote adult by virtue of the state or by the government or by responsibility. There's something that they don't know about what's about to happen to them in the world that we know is about to happen to them, and we're preparing them for those things. I think that's an underlying part of the equation that we're working with, is that, if you just left that funnel open, to use your analogy, they go out into the world and there's a big shock that's coming. There's a big disappointment that's coming.
Well, see there, and I think there's where the intentionality of what exactly are you teaching your kids? Permissive parenting seems to let the reins go and let things fall where they fall. There is some instruction, but there's not enough to help the child understand the world that they're living in. You have to understand, biblically, God has revealed to us that the world is beautiful, but it's broken. Yes, Genesis 1 through 3, we got it down. But he's also described that there are two kinds of people in the world. Those are the wise people and the foolish people. The fool says in his heart, there is no God. So if you are not starting off helping your children understand that there is a God you're held accountable to, you are now undermining the authority they need to guide their lives by. Because God is intertwined or weaving into creation wisdom. And when you talk about wisdom, I think there's 4 ways to think about it. If you think about Old Testament wisdom, one, that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. There is a God. He's created all things, and he's engaged in his creation, and you're going to be held accountable to him. That's number one. Number 2, there is a creational wisdom that is here. There are things that you can learn about the world that you can excel in by just simply observation. For instance, I live in the Midwest, and we're not planting crops right now because it's winter. When the spring comes, you're going to plant crops, and you're going to expect a harvest through the summer and into the fall. The reason why that is because creation has shown you that if you follow this process, this wisdom, you can bear fruit. So we don't teach our kids to go against that wisdom. We teach them to understand, how do you walk wisely in this world? That's a job, that's a vocation, that's skill sets, right? How do you pull out from creation how to live? Number 3, there is a moral wisdom. There's a way that you're supposed to do what is right, understand what is right, and understand what is wrong. And you have to teach your children intentionally what that morality is. You can't just let that go. You just can't let it develop on its own. That has to be intentionally taught because the child is broken and sinful. You have to teach them what is truth, absolute truth, imperative truth, truth that can be trusted to build your house on. That means the house of your faith, your life, and truth that you can live in, because you live in the truth, you die by a lie. And then finally, there's tradition. You don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. You look back and see those who've gone before you and how they've lived and what they've worked, and you understand virtue. And so when you look at wisdom, all of that has to be intentionally taught to the child as they're developing that cone, right? So that they're now understanding character and virtue alongside this relationship you're developing with them, so that when you open that cone, they do have the ability to think through decision making, and at the same time a relationship where they trust you. And I think that is the key, is permissive parenting think they're developing trust, but they're not, because you're letting this kid go off into the wild blue yonder or the pasture without any fences, and they're getting eaten alive. They don't trust you. They don't trust your decision making. They have to watch your decision making. They have to see the fruit of your decision making and believe that, you know what, you actually kind of maybe know what you're doing a little bit, and you have their best interest at heart. And I'm not seeing that in permissive parenting. So by the time your kid's older, and now my daughter's 21 years old, she's been getting married in May. Now she comes alongside me and she asks me my opinion, and my opinion carries a certain degree of weight. Well, Dad's been around the block a few times. He's been married for 25 years. He knows a few things. And I've never known my dad to act not out of my best interests. And so.
Yeah. So Jason, there's something that I wanted to.
That's what I feel like we've prioritized the relationship with this relationship. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So I was thinking about this in reference to the fact that kids will sometimes kind of push against things like family discipleship. And I'm thinking about this in reference to the fact that there is no neutrality when it comes to being a follower of Christ. You look at the indicatives of who we are in Christ. We are a new creation. Old things have passed away and the new has come. There's a regeneration that takes place a la John 3. This is kind of the theology behind it. But because we are a new creation, because we are followers of Christ, because in Matthew 6:33 we prioritize the kingdom of God, that means that there's an imperative that then becomes indicative of our life. It's the imperative personally in our lives related to following Christ. And then when we take on a wife and have a family, there's the imperative of instilling within our kids the fear and instruction of the Lord. And so we're in a process before the kids ever get to a formal church building, church fellowship. You know, it's kind of like the old reformers and Puritans used to say, the first church, the first hospital, the first school is your home. And so within the context of your home, as you're discipling your family, there's going to be an imperative that you be discipling your family. Now, what happens when you sit down with your kid and the kid says, I don't want to go to church. I don't want to read the Bible. And I think that is the part where permissive parenting begins to fall down, is there are certain things that we don't negotiate, because in our spiritual life, there are certain things that we also do not negotiate. We don't negotiate whether we're going to be a Christian today and not tomorrow. No, we're a follower of Christ every single day. And so with that comes the imperatives of being a follower of Christ every single day. And with that comes the structure, the kind providence of God, thankfulness, grace, all those different things that we have that we are supposed to be actively doing within the context of our lives. Gentle parenting just falls down on that, because at a certain level, and you know this, Jason, and if you're a parent and you're watching your kids grow up, you know at some point they don't want to go to church. At some point, they don't want to read the Bible. And gentle parenting is not able to negotiate whether or not you do or you don't.
Well, that doesn't also allow them to work through something, to push through something. Just because you don't want to do it doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. You got to push through that. You got to fight through that. That lacks a certain degree of discipline, not just corporal punishment type discipline. I'm talking about the discipline of living. I don't want to go to work today. Well, you got bills to pay. And if you got a family, you got a family to take care of. You got to get up.
I don't want to work today.
Yeah, I don't want to go to school today. And then what I find is parents with this gentle parenting idea, they're so afraid of resentment. Like, they make decisions out of, is my child going to resent me for this? I'm thinking, why are you going there? Why is that an issue? Because you tell your kid no, they're that fickle, you think they're going to resent you when you get older? Because you have I'm watching this in education. I don't want to send my kids to the school because my kid really wants to go to this school. I'm afraid he's going to resent me when he gets older. And I'm thinking he is going to resent you because you're not making the wise decision to help him work through those feelings. You're just giving in to them. That's not why.
I want to give a personal testimony and say that when I was being trained as a young man, I resented my parents. They made me do some things that I absolutely hated. And I remember at times, maybe even vocally saying to my parents, I hate you for what it is that you're doing. And one particular thing that I think my parents did, I was livid about the decision that they made. Because when I was going from the 8th grade to 9th grade into high school, my parents decided that they would sign me up for all honors classes. And so now the friends that I had before are not the friends that I have going into high school. That's a big deal for parents these days. The social environment of your kids, their emotional well-being.
Yeah.
My grandparents said, you will be in all honors classes and you will do your best in those classes. And so now that I'm a little bit older, resentment has turned into appreciation, which has turned into respect. And even if the relationship is not great between my grandparents and I, there will always be that level of respect for them to be able to see some things that were ahead of me.
Right.
And listen, we've been in this thing long enough to have kids of our own who dislike, are disgruntled, disrespectful, all of those different things. And they have hated some of our parenting decisions. We'll see where they're at when they're in their 40s.
Young and stupid marry so well together. I did the same thing. I was livid at my parents for decisions they made. I lacked understanding about, first of all, some of the things they were dealing with and working through. So
that's good.
There is that, right? I just did not understand their own stuff. And then on top of that, I didn't understand they were oftentimes stuck between a rock and a hard place sometimes. I didn't understand that. And they had to make a decision. But leaders lead. And that's what my dad did. He's like, I'm making a decision. And this is what we're going to do. And this is what you're going to do. Whether you like it or not, this is how it's going to go down. And as a young man, I desperately needed that. I needed him to do that. I didn't like it. I bowed up. I'm like, yeah, whatever. And then now I'm in the world a little bit. I'm in my 20s and 30s and 40s. And I look back and say, dang, Dad had it. Dad was right. Dad was right to step up and do that and have that ability to correct me and to force me to do some things I didn't want to do. I was short-sighted. He was long-sighted. I was misinformed. He had the facts. All kinds of things were going on there. And that's your kids, though. Your kids are going to make all these assumptions about things because they have no idea, but you have the facts. You know what you're looking for. You know where you're going. And maybe that's another problem you're seeing is I don't know if permissive parenting casts a long-term vision for your kids. I just don't know if they look too far down the road. Or if they do, maybe they look at it through only through this lens of resentment. I don't want my kids to resent me, so therefore I'm going to do this. And I'm like, that's a horrible way to parent. That's a horrible way to feel. You feel guilty all the time.
Yeah.
And so that's where I believe the gospel has been so good for me. As I go to bed at night, and for the most part, I sleep just fine of the decisions I'm making. Because I know that I'm making them in light of that for my kids. Now, I should say you had two other points, right? So what were your two other things? I'm curious with the gentle parenting.
Development of verbal skills and development of reasoning skills, essentially.
Yeah. So faith and reason, which are core convictions that the household has to develop. And I'm not sure, you spoke to this earlier, that there are going to come times kids do not want to do Bible time or kids do not want to do it. Elias right now, anytime I want to sit down and read the Bible with him, bucks me every single time. He would rather go watch TV, he'd rather go do something else.
Sure.
But what do I see down the road? I see here's a young man who needs Jesus. I see the wisdom of the Lord addressing his sin. I see ways to pray for him, and he sits down with me. And I also know that from experience, when he looks back at these times and he's sitting down with his daddy and his daddy's reading the Bible, the overall ethos of that is going to be warm and pleasant, not exasperating.
Yeah.
And I think that the reasoning skills part of it is we believe God has given them a brain to think and to rationalize through things. We have to teach them a biblical worldview to do that with. And the one caveat I have with parents is to really take Paul's advice to not exasperate your children.
Okay.
That's the tension to live in with this whole thing, is that relationship side of thing is really, really important. The trust level between the parent and the child is massive. And your children are always gauging you in the sense that, are you out of your mind, or are you actually walking on solid ground here? Because children can smell a hypocrite a mile away. They can realize something's wanky. They may not have the courage to maybe speak up, but they know it, and it'll come out later when you're in your 20s. And so parents, fathers in particular, we have to be careful not to exasperate our children, to understand what is appropriate guilt, what is appropriate shame. That's fine, because you should feel that if you sinned against somebody, but not to put expectations so high the kids can't reach, or that we're not willing to help them get there, or to misappropriate shame and guilt in a way that the child feels hopeless. We've got to watch that tension. That's where I think I get myself in trouble if I'm not careful.
Sure.
Because I will come too hard, too much at one time, to which I need to say, okay, Lord, I'm sorry. And then make sure I talk to the child and say, look, I'm sorry. I went too hard. I got to pull back.
Yes. And so I would share in that sentiment with you. And I think some of our best times of growth have been those times when I've had to go to the kids and say, I'm sorry. Got a little too amped up there. And as a result of that, sinned against you, and then work through a biblical process. You know, I found that in every single occasion, my kids have been very quick when I come to them and apologize to them and ask forgiveness and seek forgiveness for sins that I've committed against them. They are extremely quick to offer that forgiveness and to reconcile the relationship. I can say that. There's been some things that I have not done right, but in those moments, their response has been extremely humbling. I just think that sometimes they think you're more of a sinner than you think that you are, and they're probably right about that, but the Lord has got to work on that part of it.
Yeah. Well, here's the other thing I think permissive parenting misses the mark on with discipline. They are afraid to tell their kid no, so they use a lot of redirection. And then they're afraid to actually lay the boom on the kid a little bit, say a swat in the behind, because culture.
Hey, can we jump into that in just a second? We're going to deal with some more of the sensitive issues. Now that we've got some folks who are watching, I just want to remind them the comment section is turned on. So if you guys want to jump in the conversation and be in part of what's going on here, you guys can definitely do that. There's about a 10-second or so delay, but I'll make sure that I pay attention to the comment section. I want to talk about spanking, corporal punishment, physical discipline, what you're about to get into. And I also want to talk about finances. I want to tell a story of how we've handled some of the discussions related to finances and kind of the socioeconomics of family that kids sometimes are not aware of. And so we'll be back in just a few moments. This is our top story today. We're talking about permissive parenting versus what we consider to be more authoritative, guided, biblical parenting. You're going to lower the boom. The rod, God, and your child's bod.
Yeah.
Get them.
So our culture right now has just gone off the deep end with absolutely no spanking. Illinois just even passed a law that says even Christian schools can't bring the wood a little bit because psychology has said this is bad. That's insane. I think beating your kid is bad. That's wrong. You shouldn't do that. Healthy corporal punishment is a really intimate side of discipline that I believe is absolutely necessary and can be quick and solve so many problems early on that will help your relationship be much better. When we decided to use corporal punishment, which wasn't a very hard decision, but I think my wife kind of had to come around to it a little bit. And at first she was absolutely not, because our kids are going to be just fine, whatever. And then Naomi had her nice big fit, and she realized, wow, we need to do something a little more
So somebody
instructive.
better do something about this.
That's right. That's right. And so we started talking. I said, I remember having a conversation with saying, this is not personal. We don't hate our children. We don't dislike our children. Naomi is just going through the process of growing. You know, she's not getting her way, and her natural inclination is to rebel and to come hard at you like this, to have that tantrum, to throw her hands in your face or whatever. So what is corporal punishment meant to do? What are we trying to accomplish with it? That was a really helpful discussion, because it wasn't the fact of going in there and just beating your behind. That's not the goal.
Yeah.
The problem with the child, when you've reached a point for corporal punishment, is pride has really blinded them to life. Pride is at its peak. They are as proud as they're going to be that day when they're pretty much telling you to get back. They're throwing their fits, and they're even laying hands on you or whatever when they're little kids and whatnot. That's pride. Pride is telling them that they're in charge. Pride is telling them it's their kingdom. Pride is telling them that your kingdom better back off or there's going to be war. That's why I told my wife, we don't negotiate with terrorists at all. There's one kingdom in the house. It's God's kingdom, and I've been given the right and the privilege to oversee that in my house. So I need to take care of this. And so the goal is to help humility teach the child that they're wrong. That's not the way to live. Pride leads to death. And if they keep continuing in this pride, they're going to fall. So when we go into the bathroom, so to speak, that's where we typically did our corporal punishment. We talk about where those lines were crossed. We talk about, hey, this is not what I expect from you. This is what the Lord expects from you. And you're going to get, and we dish out exactly what punishment you're going to get. You know, 1 swat in the butt, 2 swats in the butt, whatever it's going to be. And then afterwards, after the spanking happens, the spanking now humbles the child to realize you're not in control, you're not king, you're not Lord, but you crossed these lines and you need to get back over. And then there's an embrace. There's this, I love you too much to have you disobey. I remember hearing Dave say that 100 times to his girls in his house. I love you too much to have you walk in disobedience. You can't do this. This is not good for you. And,
Dave,
and
referring to a pastor who mentored you.
Yeah, Dave Puchel, who discipled me and still disciples me. And I remember telling that to my kids as they were growing up. I said, I love you a lot. And this is going to break our fellowship, and this is going to break your fellowship with God. And I don't want that. I need to fix this. And so we had this teaching moment. Then there's a great opportunity, you know, children, obey your parents, the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother, that it may go well with you. Mm-hmm. Is it going well with you? No, Daddy, it's not. Okay, well, let's get back on track. And we get through it. We hug, we reconcile. It's done. It's finished. It's over. And we're moving on. And you know what? In kids, in like 5 minutes, they're moving along. Like they're not this lingering thing of something lingering for like hours or weeks on end because that was never fully resolved. I think that does more emotional damage than a spanking on the behind does in a couple of minutes.
Uh-huh.
And that's how it went. We used the wood for that moment, and we also were wise because we had to understand what's the difference between foolishness and rebellion. Foolishness is wrapped up in the heart of a child, and that will show itself in just doing silly kids things, right? And so the kids would do foolish things. We had creative ways to deal with that. Sometimes it was sitting in the foolish chair. I don't know if you guys ever did anything like this. It's a wall sit. What how you're acting is as foolish as sitting in a chair that's not there. That's how we would phrase it. Mm-hmm. And so either you're going to be one of the greatest soccer players or powerlifters in the world, or you're going to realize this is foolish. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. We had stuff like that, mountain climbers or jumping jacks, something to help redirect. But when there was flat out rebellion, that was where we said no, because this leads to death. This leads to death. We got to deal with this ASAP. And I think permissive parenting does not allow any of that inside of its framework. And I think it just allows issues to linger way too long in the house. and
Yeah.
the child suffers for it in the long run.
We could probably do a whole episode on just the issue of spanking children, because I'm thinking about even in our own family, how many safeguards, if you will, checks and
Right.
balances we would put in
Right.
there. It was never,
Right.
when I would get a spanking when I was little, it's because I had done something that was foolish, or I had done something that was wrong, just flat out wrong. And
Yeah.
the anger of my disciplinarians was at a high level, meeting me
Yeah.
at a place where I'm now
You're
being
very
disciplined.
vulnerable. Yeah.
And I didn't feel like that was ever appropriate. I didn't feel like it was biblical as well. And so I love the fact that we're at least diving into an area where, if you've never heard any of this before and you're having some discussions about maybe we're not going to do this sort of permissive parenting,
Yeah.
maybe we are going to have some biblical, instructive, intentional, parenting, then we would never do that when we were at the height of our anger. We would put a safeguard in
No.
there so that we're actually having
Yeah.
a discussion, so that we actually understand how many
Yeah.
SWATs are about to come and why they're about to come. And Hebrews chapter
Yeah.
12, this legitimizes you in the context of the family, like all of those different things. We could do a whole episode on that, Jason, but the time is running short. I want to talk about one story that is more of a recent story and recent phenomenon, because as you know, as the children age, the form of punishment, the kind of punishment may obviously need to be altered as the kids age, and what actually speaks to them. So we can get into that a little bit later. But here's one of the things that I think kids are intuitive, like you're talking about, Jason. Kids understand the socioeconomic strata of your family. They can look around. They can see nice cars. We used to do that on the school bus. Oh, that's my car. Oh, that's my car.
Yeah.
I want to have that car when I get up. That's your car. It's all junky and everything. Look, Sanford and Son. Like, so we would get into those kind of things. But you would recognize your family maybe don't have the nice car. Look at houses. Maybe your family doesn't have the nice house.
Yep.
There are certain things that, as a parent, we've not invited our kids into a discussion to look at our bank account every month to see where the expenditures are going and what's being paid for and what's not, and what we're putting in savings and what we're trying to do for them as kids. We don't go over all those financial details.
Right.
Because it's not their place to know those kind of things.
Right.
However, in very many occasions, and maybe you can testify to this as well, very many occasions we've had to make decisions based on where we're at financially, knowing the number of responsibilities that we've got to take care of. So when a child asks for a new thing, or they want this, or this is going to take us beyond the budget that we have, you got to say no, or you got to delay that, or you got to find some way to have that conversation so that they understand that there are limitations. There's limits to this, and there's levels to this. And it's only been recently that we've had to have some of those discussions related to finances, to just basically say, hey, we just don't have it. If we had it, we would have given it to help our kids just decompress a little bit.
Yep.
If we had it, don't you know we would give it?
Yeah.
And, again, I think that speaks to the area of trust. I think it says volumes about the relationship that you're developing with your kids. Even when they can't see those things, they can kind of intuitively figure out, oh, our parents, they can't act like that. They can't, do these kind of things. So anything that you would want to say with regards to that conversation?
Oh man, that I had the conversation with Elias. He's like, Daddy, we going on vacation this year? I said, baby, we broke.
How about a staycation?
Vacations cost money, and and he's like, what are you talking about? Because in his world, everything just kind of shows up. You're right. If you early on in your child's life, if you will do the hard work of good biblical discipline, make sure you're building this establishment where you're making the decisions, you're helping them understand the categories, you're bringing corporal punishment when it's appropriate, you're using creativity other times, and you establish this relationship of trust where they know, if we had it, we would give it, that kind of thing. It makes those things go smoother later. Because we have this conversation every time. When Naomi turned 16, we didn't get it. We didn't have the money to get her a car. She had to drive the truck around a little bit, and she saved up some money and bought her own car. Ethan turned 16, and we don't have money to get him a car.
Vacation cars, camps, travel teams, extracurricular things.
Abigail Lillian is 15, got her permit, coming into 16. We don't have the money to get her a car. We don't have money to get her a car. She looks
Certain
at
types of
us.
cell phones, yeah.
Yeah, she doesn't have a cell phone. Abram doesn't have a cell phone. That costs money, and they trust us though with these decisions, and they realize that we said no a lot when they were little, so that we could say yes more later, and we have. And there've been times when, we don't say yes we don't say no just for arbitrary reasons. If we could do it, let's do it. Let's be generous. Otherwise, no is okay when they're little. Now, when we got to 15 and we have to say, we would love for you to have a car. It would even be for our benefit that you have a car. We just can't afford it. There's no pushback. She's beautiful about it. She's understanding. Naomi and Ethan both were. They completely understood. They understood where we were, and there was no. You guys are bad parents because you're not giving me what I want. Well, that's because they have character, and they understand virtue, and they understand what the Lord expects from them, and they understand our relationship, and they understand what they've been taught when they were little, and they understand that we have gone above and beyond to try to give them the best we can within certain boundaries. And there's a respect level, and I really appreciate the way my kids have responded to that adversity, because they have a depth to them that's really wonderful to watch. Abram's the same way. Abram knows that this is where we are, and it's okay. God will provide, and we'll keep her moving. That was a lot of work done early, and I need to be cautious here, because I don't want to give the impression that if you find this magic formula for your kids, that if you just implement this strategy, your kids will turn out just fine. That's not true.
Yeah,
that's not
Thanks
true.
For that. Thanks for that.
Yeah, that's not true. You could do all the right things as a parent, and your kids still have to make decisions, and they still have sinful natures, and they still make their own journey, and that's something out of your control. This is where parents, at the end of the day, you have to trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean not in your understanding, and all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will make your path straight. And that's the prayer. That's the way forward for you, by the way, is you just, at the end of the day, make your decisions, love your children, teach them wisdom, and let the Lord do what He's going to do, and rest in that. Because if you think that you can manipulate your kids, or you can have some strategy that will just make them, great children, you will find very quickly that in the end it won't work out what you think. You have to let God do this work. That's it.
Give the church a way forward. Give the church a way forward.
Trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean not on your understanding, all your ways. Acknowledge Him and make your path straight, first and foremost. Second of all, be intentional with your kids. It's okay to provide authoritative, wise guidance to your children. Do it early and often when they're younger, so that you can loosen up the reins a bit. Provide a grid of wisdom for them to think through as they're making decisions at each stage of their life, so that when they become adults, they have that grid to think through. They're not going to be perfect. Allow grace to mingle in there when they make their mistakes. Don't overdo the shame and exasperation, but make sure they are held accountable. Don't just let them wander off the deep end. G.K. Chesterton had a wonderful example of why laws and boundaries are necessary. If you take a group of children and you put them on a 100-foot plateau that's up in the air, and you give them a ball to play with, they will only play in a small circle, because once they go over that cliff and they realize that death is there, they're not going to expand out. The moment you put boundaries up, a fence, a net, something up that they feel safe in, all of a sudden they're playing all over that plateau, because they understand where the boundaries are. And that's what you're doing as a parent. You're putting up safe boundaries for them when you are authoritative, and you are guiding them, and you're giving them wisdom and understanding the world they live in. To flow God's presence. So that's not going to happen in permissive parenting and gentle parenting. You're going to fail miserably if you continue with that philosophy. You need to embrace a more biblical oriented philosophy that allows for your authority to be upheld and their image bearing to be valued. I think Timothy Paul Jones called it gifts to be treasured and sinners to be trained. That's a wonderful tension.
Yeah. Amen. One thing that is a important part for Jason and I is that we address the church and the concerns of the church. And As I was thinking through this, Jason, in preparation for this show, I was thinking about the fact that we are a spiritual community. We're a fellowship. We're a group of people who have been called out of the world. And where that collision, if you will, takes place, or where that community takes place, it involves families, it involves kids. And sometimes it involves a situation whereby we are not only training and discipling our own kids, but we are training and discipling in the context of other families and other people. And so to the permissive parents that are out there, I would just say that we do desire as a church and a community and a fellowship of the faith to disciple your kids. But for you to maybe assume that we would have the same type of philosophy when we're discipling the people of God that you have in your home is maybe a strain upon the church that I've seen, and maybe an area whereby we can come alongside of generally younger parents, permissive parents, and help them to understand that we live in a community together. If your kid is terrorizing the place because you've just let them just terrorize everything in every place that they've been, it does create an unnecessary and an unnatural tension that exists within the family of God. Families don't want to hang out with you anymore. It creates separation, it creates division, and the together nature of it. Yes, we can work through the tensions, we can work through the disappointments, we can work through the discouragements. We are the family of God. We can do that. But why put unnecessary strain in the family of God because your kids are hellions and out of control? I think Jason has given us some wise counsel today, and hopefully this episode has given you an opportunity to begin to think through your parenting. None of us is perfect. I think after this show, there's several things the Lord has brought to my mind that I want to be better as a parent in. And hopefully with shows like this, we can encourage that kind of response. The kids would know that their parents watch the way forward, and that as a result of that, we are better parents moving forward and moving the Church of Jesus Christ forward. So thank you so much for watching us. Thank you, Jason, for all your contributions.
Yeah,
Peace.
my pleasure.
Yeah.
Government officials insist